Article VI. Miscellaneous statutory offences under Police Regulations. Chapter 72. Particular offences. Section 840. Generally, the difference between police wrongs and other crimes has been previously considered. Perhaps the greatest difference is that the acts punishable by the statutes as police wrongs are not usually considered to involve moral turpitude, but are acts which the growth of public opinion has recognized as inimical to the public good, and which the legislature has rendered punishable. In most crimes of this class a specific act is punishable, and intent is not an essential element of the offense. In considering illegal sales of liquor and some other offenses, some specific crimes of this class have been treated. In this chapter little more will be done than to name other offenses made such by statute in most American jurisdictions, repeating that the only essential difference in prosecutions for these offenses is that a specific intent to violate the statute or do an unlawful act is usually immaterial. It is sufficient if an act is done which the law prohibits. Section 841. Sale of adulterated and unwholesome food. The sale of unwholesome food, or that which is unfit for consumption, is punishable by statute. There are many state and federal statutes which provide penalties for the sale of adulterated foods and drinks. These statutes are intended both to protect the public health and to prevent fraud of the purchasers. It is often made punishable, for instance, to sell milk which falls below a certain legal standard in the percentage of its constituent elements, to sell certain foods colored with certain dyes, to sell foods containing ingredients other than those claimed, to sell imitations of butter as butter, and many other specific adulterations of food and drink are punishable. The Federal Food and Drugs Act of 1906 defines and punishes the adulteration of food and the misbranding of packages in which food and drugs are sold. Section 842. Housing laws. Regulation of conditions of employment. Statutes may specify certain conditions under which houses may be erected, and certain specifications as to their character, in the interests of health and public welfare, which must be complied with, and render violation of these conditions indictable. There may be penalties fixed for employing persons for a time longer than a certain number of hours in a day or week, for failure to maintain working places in accordance with statutory specifications. The employment of children may be forbidden under penalty. It is usual to regulate by statute to some degree working conditions in mines, factories and workshops. Section 843. Regulation of professions and occupations. Many professions and occupations require such a degree of skill in those practicing them, that the legislature may prescribe certain qualifications which one must have to follow them, usually ascertained by examination, and may punish those who follow these professions or occupations without license. The reason for this is to protect the public from incompetent persons following these callings. So it is well recognized that the practice of medicine, dentistry and pharmacy should be licensed by the state, in order to protect public health. Locomotive and steamboat engineers, and captains of vessels are required to have licenses to show their competency. The practice of law may be regulated both on the ground of protecting the public, and because attorneys are officers of the court, and for that reason the practice of law is subject to regulation. In most of the occupations in which license is required it is a misdemeanor to follow them without license. The conducting of public markets, public warehouses, carriers and other kinds of businesses are regulated because of their public nature, and violations of these regulations are sometimes indictable. Section 844. Other police regulations. Vagrancy is punishable under some statutes. There are many regulations as to conduct of business, some of which render a violation indictable. The use of false weights and measures may be punishable criminally, the taking of usury, the using of certain classes of vehicles on streets, peddling without license, driving vehicles at certain rates of speed, or without license. Many of such acts are punishable by municipal ordinances.